Hey, what's up guys? So we're back with another Star Wars video. If you're new channel, welcome. Now this one came out very recently by Stupendous Wave, and this one is called The Most Unfair Lightsaber Form in Star Wars, Telekinetic Lightsaber Combat. And by the way, again, shout out and credit goes to the Stupendous Wave for the video. Now, the Telekinetic Lightsaber Combat and who I saw on the thumbnail is the one and only Darth Traya. Now, the first time I ever saw Darth Traya, I thought it was, it blew my mind, like how she does lightsaber combat. Because if I remember correctly, she lost one of her hands, but instead of wielding the lightsaber with by her hand, she summons like 3 lightsabers and they float, and she uses them to fight. And I was thinking, whoa, I didn't know you can even do that. So that was the most unique thing, and the one thing that stood out to me by Darth Traya, because I don't think any other Jedi or Sith does a telekinetic lightsaber combat. If there is, please let me know, because I would actually like to look into that character more. But besides that, the main focus will be Darth Traya and her telekinetic lightsaber combat form. So without anything else, let's just jump right into it.
In the vast tapestry of Star Wars legends, lightsaber combat is as much an art form as it is a discipline of survival. Across thousands of years, Jedi and Sith alike have refined their techniques into 7 primary forms, countless sub-forms, and hybridized styles unique to their wielders. Yet, amid all of these traditions, there exists a combat method so rare that it borders on myth. True telekinetic lightsaber combat, not the occasional saber throw, not a force-assisted feint, but the sustained, precision-controlled wielding of one or more blades, entirely using the Force. On the surface, it might seem like an extension of basic telekinesis. Force users frequently hurl objects, disarm opponents, or summon their sabers back to their hand mid-fight. But telekinetic lightsaber combat is an entirely different order of difficulty. A lightsaber is not a static object. It is a contained loop of superheated plasma stabilized by a magnetic field of energy, a modulation circuits that are constantly adjusting themselves during the motion. When a lightsaber is held in the hand, those adjustments are naturally reinforced by the wielder's tactile feedback. Tiny, almost subconscious corrections made through the muscles, wrists, and the grip that keep the blade stable. Remove that grip, and you remove the safety net. The wielder must now maintain both the hilt's position and the blade's plasma stability entirely with the Force. It's not simply a matter of moving a weapon from point A to point B. It's about constantly compensating for the micro instabilities caused by motion, impact, and the weapon's own tendencies. A standard parry between 2 lightsabers involves an immediate instinctive counter pressure from the wielder's hands. In telekinetic combat though, there are no hands, only the Force user's mental projections, guiding magnetic stabilizers and repositioning the hilt at exactly the right angle in less than a fraction of a second. All of this has to happen during a duel.
So basically, it takes a lot of concentration and mental like strength to even like wield 1, and yet Darth Traya is able to do it with 3. That tells you everything you need to know about her.
True duel between Force-sensitive opponents is already an accelerated chess match played at speeds beyond the limits of normal perception. Combatants use a form of battle precognition, reading intent fractions of a heartbeat before the strike ever occurs, then chaining those predictions into a reflexive movement. Now imagine doing all of that while also piloting a weapon remotely, tracking its vector, its angle, and kinetic output as it engages another high-energy plasma blade in real time. This is why almost no Jedi or Sith even attempt to wield the saber telekinetically for more than a second or 2. It is one of the rarest applications of the Force in all of Star Wars, not because it lacks utility, but because the cognitive load required to do it effectively is astronomical. If your concentration falters for even the smallest fraction of a second, the blade drops, your defenses collapse, and the duel is over. In Legends, Horn struggles with telekinesis serve as proof that even among Force wielders, abilities like TK are skills, not guarantees. Mastery was not universal. It depended on training, focus, and in some cases, one's natural affinity. Some could refine the basics, but never excel at complex applications, while others, like we'll be discussing today, Darth Traya, seemed born with an instinctive talent. For her, telekinesis wasn't just another tool in the Force, it was a natural gift. A gift that she elevated to an art form that almost no one would ever match. But Darth Traya didn't just attempt this, she nearly perfected it. She didn't wield 1 saber through the Force, she chose to wield 3. all of them simultaneously, each moving independently, attacking from different angles, flowing together in an unbroken rhythm of offense and defense. It was more than a display of raw power. It was a statement of identity, a way of fighting that few in galactic history could even conceive, let alone master. So why Traya alone? The most shocking thing about Darth Traya's use of full telekinetic lightsaber combat isn't just how well she executed it. It's the fact that no one else in recorded Jedi or Sith history adopted it as their primary style before or after her.
I mean, 3 is crazy, but I mean, like, imagine this was actually her. She was, let's see, 10 lightsabers. Imagine her wielding 10 lightsabers. Bro, no one can stand up against her.
Absence alone tells us something critical. The Trayus form, as one may call it, was not merely rare, it was virtually incompatible with the way most Force users would approach combat. Jedi teachings emphasize connection between the wielder and their weapon. The lightsaber wasn't just a tool, it was an extension of the Jedi's own body and their spirit, a constant in their training and their meditation. That bond was reinforced physically with every adjustment of the grip and every shift of a stance. To deliberately sever that connection in battle would be, to a traditional Jedi, a kind of sacrilege. It was the abandonment of one of the most sacred combat principles. The Sith, by contrast, may seem more likely candidates for such a style. They prize innovation, dominance, and intimidation. And yet, even the most cunning Dark Lords kept their blades in their hands. Part of this was practical. Telekinetic combat carries enormous risks, but part of it was also cultural. To a Sith, the duel was an arena of personal power. It was about physically standing over your enemy blade in hand, asserting superiority. Relinquishing that direct control would have been sacrilege to many Sith warriors, as though conceding that their own strength was not enough. Traya stood outside both of these traditions. As Kreia, she had been a Jedi historian, a woman deeply versed in theory and the philosophy of the Jedi, but increasingly disillusioned with its dogma. As Darth Traya, she rejected the Sith's obsession with personal dominance. She saw it as a self-defeating spiral of ego and destruction. Traya existed between these extremes, despising both their blindness to what she saw as the deeper truths of the Force. Her choice to wield the sabers purely through the Force was not just a mechanical innovation, it was a philosophical rebellion. In severing the physical bond between the warrior and the weapon, Traya was making a symbolic break from both the Jedi and Sith tradition of ego. She transformed the duel into something that her opponents could not properly engage with on their own terms. Lightsaber forms are built around predictable ranges, angles, and stances. The Trayus form shattered these assumptions. How do you read an opponent's intent when their blades orbit them like autonomous predators, striking without the usual tells of a shoulder movement or even footwork?
Yeah, that would give her a huge advantage, because I mean, when you're like fighting someone and then like maybe give a few seconds or a few moves, then you could like read your opponent a little bit more, like how they strike, how they move their feet, like footwork, and how they swing. Are they more aggressive? Are they more defensive? So it makes it easier. However, just a floating lightsaber without the person wielding it and not moving, that takes away all that. So she has like a huge, she has a huge advantage when it comes to like mind games and psychological, a more psychological effect, because that's going to confuse the opponent a lot more, because it's just a floating lightsaber. You don't know which way it's going to swing, how it's going to swing, so it makes it more unpredictable than predictable as a person wielding it itself from the grip.
But we need to make one thing clear. Darth Traya was not a peerless physical duelist. She was skilled, capable of holding her own against experts, but she was no Tulak Horde, no Gemso juggernaut like Darth Malgus. In a purely physical contest of speed and strength, she may have been outmatched by the greats. The Trayus form, though, helped to level that playing field. It allowed her to fight in a way that emphasized her true strengths, her mastery of the Force, her strategic mind, and her ability to unsettle and disorient her enemy before striking decisively. Her mastery of telekinetic lightsaber combat was an extension of her personality and her philosophy. It was calculated, cerebral, and subversive. Traya didn't want to win duels, she wanted to redefine them. In doing all of this, she crafted a fighting style that was not just rare, it was wholly hers. If we were to give Darth Traya's telekinetic fighting style a name, and in-universe we believe it deserves one, the Trayus form is fitting. It connects directly to her identity as Darth Traya, her seat of power in the Trayus Academy on Malachor 5, and her philosophy of severing bonds. Whether between people, between master and student, or between a warrior and their weapon. The Treyas form was not a random blade flinging. Each saber moved with the same calculated purpose as if Treya were holding it herself. The form's foundation seems to have been an intricate blend of Makashi, Surisu, and Trakata principles, woven
Oh,
together
so a
into something
combination of different
entirely
forms.
new. Makashi, the duelist form, provided her with the precision-based offensive sequences, controlled thrusts, and angled cuts that required minimal motion to generate lethal force. Surisu contributed to the defensive structure, a constant sphere of protection that kept her physical body shielded while her sabers occupied the enemy's attention. Trakata, the rarest of the three, this added an element of deception, allowing her to deactivate and reignite a blade mid-strike in order to bypass an opponent's guard, or to throw off their timing entirely. The true genius of the Treyas form, though, lay in these elements and how they were executed telekinetically. Lightsaber combat relies heavily on physical tells, shoulder shifts, wrist rotations, changes in stance. Treya's opponents, though, had none of these to read. A saber might dart forward with no visible windup, it could pivot in midair, or reverse its angle of attack in ways that violated the normal flow of blade momentum. She could change targets instantly, redirecting one saber from a parry into an unexpected strike against a second foe without any physical transition. This
And also on top of that, it's harder to track because a person is huge, so it's easier to like keep an eye on the opponent and like read their movements. But however, it's a floating lightsaber. This thing could like dart back and forth, and it's a smaller object than a human being, so it's a lot harder to keep track of. So that's more dangerous, and it gives Trey the advantage.
absence of telegraphing meant that Treya's attacks were almost entirely dependent on the opponent's ability to sense them coming through the Force. And even then, the angles could be alien to a trained duelist's instinct. Against a single enemy, she could keep one saber in constant pressure, probing for openings, while the other two shifted between interception and harassment. Against multiple enemies, she could delegate each blade to a different target, preventing them from overwhelming her through numbers. The defensive utility was equally impressive. She could intercept blaster bolts from multiple angles without needing to physically reposition herself, all while setting up killing strikes everywhere else on the battlefield. This is why, for all of its elegance, the Treyas form wasn't merely a duelist's flourish, it was a combat philosophy. But just as quickly as the form was born, it disappeared. The Treyas form vanished with Darth Treya. No one else, Jedi or Sith, ever took up her mantle as a full telekinetic duelist. And in many ways, it's very understandable why. The demands of the style are extreme. It required a combination of force precision, concentration, and philosophical detachment from conventional combat that few could ever match. But while the form itself may have disappeared, its core idea, that a lightsaber could be a weapon untethered from its wielder's hand, did not die. This idea found new life in the combat style of Darth Vader. Vader would never wield multiple sabers telekinetically the way that Treya did, but he mastered one of the most lethal single applications of telekinetic blade work, the saber throw. Vader's saber throw was not a flourish. This was a calculated extension of his arsenal. He could send his blade hurling across a battlefield, guiding it with the force to cut down enemies at range, then recall it seamlessly to his hand. At first glance, the saber throw may seem like a distant cousin to the Treyas form, a brief offensive projection rather than a sustained multi-angle assault. But it carries with it the same DNA. Both techniques break the conventional range of a duel, both eliminate the need for the wielder to be physically next to their target, and both in turn turn the lightsaber into something more than a sword. They turn it into a force-guided instrument of death. The difference lies in focus and sustainability, where Treya built her entire combat style around the constant, high-load concentration of multiple independent blades. Vader integrated telekinetic control into a broader, more grounded style. His base form, a modified Gem So, was already centered on overwhelming power, tight defense, and precision attack. The saber throw became a natural extension, something he could deploy without breaking his physical engagement with an opponent or overtaxing his concentration. It was
the most amazing saber throw, in my opinion, that I've ever witnessed was actually Savage Opress in the Clone Wars. Because I still remember when, spoiler if you guys haven't seen it, when Death Watch, Darth Maul, and Savage Opress were working together to build up an army to take over Mandalore, and they went to the Black Suns, and the Black Suns leadership refused. Savage Opress literally decapitated like the entire leadership with just one saber throw with a double bladed lightsaber. And in my opinion, that was the most savage move savage lightsaber throw I've ever seen.
Was efficient, controlled, and repeatable in any environment, from duels to open battlefields. In a way, this was the practical evolution of Treia's concept. She had shown that a lightsaber could operate as a separate, autonomous weapon. Vader would refine that lesson into a tool that could be integrated seamlessly into a Sith's day-to-day combat. But instead of building his entire style on that idea, he distilled it to its more potent, sustainable form. Vader didn't need 3 lightsabers orbiting him. He only needed one, thrown at the right moment, guided by the same precision that kept Treia's blades in perfect, lethal arcs. There's an argument to be made that this is how the Sith often refine power. The visionary innovator Treia, in this case, creates something unique, but it exists in a rarefied, almost impractical space. Then comes the warlord or the conqueror Vader, who strips it down to the essentials, removing the artistry but keeping the core advantage. Treia's style demanded you to play by her rules. Vader's saber throw fit neatly into the rules of his own brutal, forward-pressing offense. And yet, the philosophical echo remains. Both saw the lightsaber not as a fixed extension of the body, but as a manifestation of the will. For Darth Treia, that meant 3 lightsabers weaving a sphere of deception and inevitability. For Vader, it meant a single blade that could cut you down from across the room while his towering frame advanced, unrelenting in the background. So the legacy of the Treia's form is not in its direct adoption, it's in how it was quietly shifted and the perception of what a lightsaber could be changed. Most duelist Jedi or Sith still fought within the boundaries of what their hands could reach. Treia and Vader saw past this limitation. One turned it into an art form, the other into a weapon of war. But together they proved that the deadliest strikes do not always come from the blade in front of you. They come from the one that you never see coming. And Treia, a revolutionary both philosophically and in the Force, proved also to be a revolutionary in lightsaber combat, even if many of her techniques were inherently flawed. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on Treia's lightsaber form? Remarkably,
really cool.
An unnamed form in the lore. What do you think of calling it the Treia's form? And do you think that in the future, there are those that could apply it more successfully than Treia did? More deadly? As always, my friends, if you haven't yet, reach out and crush that subscribe button. And as always, may the Force be with you.
So with the telekinetic lightsaber combat, known as the Treia's form, I say the Treia's form is the best way to call it. And looks like the foundation of the form is deception, because it's just a floating lightsaber. There's no person behind it, so keeping track of a floating lightsaber, where it's going to strike, how it's going to strike, is very unpredictable. So it makes sense that deception would be the base foundation of that art, of that lightsaber combat form. But if she was and I say it will be very effective when it comes to deflecting lightsaber bolts or like fighting multiple opponents, because it's 3. But I always wondered if Darth Treia was able to wield more than 3, because there was an image right there where it showed like a character that looked like her, or I don't know if it is her, wielding 10. So I always wondered, what is the max limit she can wield? Because if she can wield more than 3, then Knights of the Old Republic 2 would have been very different. I mean, I haven't played Knights of the Republic 2, but from what I've been seeing as the images, looks like she's like one of the final bosses you may be fighting or meeting. I don't know. But either way, that's like I said, that is like what made Darth Treia stand out to me, because of 3 floating purple lightsabers. I haven't seen any other character do that. Telekinetic lightsaber combat. And yes, Darth Vader throwing the lightsaber in Episode 6 at Luke Skywalker was what was introduced as lightsaber throw. But however, there were many other characters who did do it, like, Savage Opress, and also in the games like Battlefront 2, you like almost every single lightsaber wielding character can like throw their lightsaber. But either way, this was really great. And again, shout out and credit goes to the Stupendous Wave for explaining it very well. And if she went up against like maybe Tulak Horde or Exar Kun, I wonder how it would have turned out, because they're not fighting against a person, they're fighting against the lightsabers. So I always wondered that. What do you guys think? Do you think she would have done well against those guys, or maybe she would have lost? let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But either way, that's all I got for today. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for watching. Hit that notification bell so you know when I drop another video. And also shout out to all my members, subscribers, viewers. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for your support, guys. I really do appreciate it. So without anything else, see you guys next time.